Welcome to Sacred Magic. Violet is on a quest to bring sacredness back into our everyday experiences. Anyone can have an extraordinary life when they are able to tap into their sacred magic within. Violet and her guests will be sharing their divine passions, inspirations, and stories of connecting with their sacred magic. We are so happy you have joined us today. Let's get started with your host, the magical creator of Discover Your Spiritual Gifts, Vialet Rayne.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sacred Magic Podcast. I'm your host, Vialet B Rayne, and today my guest is Terrie Christine. She's been on our show previously, and I'm so excited, to have her back on the show. She's an internationally recognized intuitive energy healer and psychic medium for the past 19 years. You love how allergies really help our voices. Terrie has been seen and featured in Bravo's hit TV show, The Real Housewives of Potomac, the OWN Network's Love and Marriage in DC, Good Morning Washington, Fox Las Vegas and Chicago, and Fox 5 DC. Through her work as an intuitive energy healer, she has mastered the ability to assess her own intuition, which allows her to fully envision the struggle, hurt, fears, and anxiety you are currently going through. She works with clients all over the world and continues to be a source of emotional and spiritual healing and self-empowerment community. The last time I interviewed her, we just barely got to touch on manifesting, and I was like, we could do a whole entire show on that. So today we're going to talk a lot about how do we manifest our dreams and desires? What does that look like? How we need to do that. But first, I'm going to let Terrie share with us some of her experiences she's had in manifesting her dreams and desires and how that's worked for her.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me back. I'm so excited. You know, I tell people I'm a master manifester and they kind of blink, 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 blink at me. But I know, KNOW, how I've got it down to a science with how this works. And I have many people, I did a whole entire podcast somewhere else where she wanted me to give step by step on how to manifest. And you know, I can tell you, but the fact is you have to dive deeper than the surface level. And, you know, let's talk about it. So, you know, when someone says, ooh, that's expensive, delete, then that's all a matter of perception based on that person, because you know, you could sell a program that's valued at like 5,000 and it's going to change someone's entire life. But the first thing based on their so-called reality is they're going to say, oh, that's too expensive. When in fact, if you and your end results of your program can alter and change someone's entire life, that's just a little seed in the field of flowers. And so we have to shift and change how we perceive things. As I said, I'm going to repeat that: perceive things and shift that which you think is your reality, because it's not. It's what was put upon you. It's what you created as your so-called reality. And this is my truth. Delete, because that's what you're telling yourself. And that is a lie. It's a lie you're telling yourself. You know what I'm saying?
I love that because, you know, I am so into manifesting and prosperity and money, and I just love talking to different people and getting different perspectives. I'm really one that dives into those individuals that have prospered effectively and really listening to how they got there and what changed, because our limiting beliefs, whether we understand it or not, create that perception of I can't afford it, delete. And we do that all the time. We see something that we really desire and want, and we go, oh, I can't have that. Delete. And then we can't get it. We can't receive it. And it's when we declare that it's mine and I'm going to have it and I'm going to bring it in and it is going to be mine is sometimes how we can really create and manifest. I've manifested stuff throughout my life that has really shocked my family when I've done it and it's come into reality because they're like, how did you do that? Like, how did you go from point A to point B? And I go, I just told the universe, that's what I want and that's what I'm going to have. And it sounds simple, but it isn't always as simple as it sounds. Right?
Exactly. And you know, what you said is, I told the universe what I want and I am going to have it. I am, you know, like you're owning it. And that's the beginning of it. I and you, it sounds like, or we're on the same path, is that when we step into something, we believe without a doubt, without a doubt, that we can create it. And that's just the stepping stone into manifesting the end result. I mean, it takes a few other steps, but it has to start with thinking it, feeling it, and taking guided action. And so when you are saying something, you're already thinking it, you know, and it's just like getting in the car. You know, when I ask, you know, what does your end result look like? What is it that you want in your life? If you're going to respond, I don't know, well, that's just like getting in the car and not knowing where you're going to drive. How can you get the energy to move to the end result if you don't know where you want to go? So I tell people, then chisel it down. Let's say you want to be a healer and you don't know what that looks like. So then go back inside and say, well, what would that feel like to you? How would that empower you? Because once it empowers you, it empowers everyone else. It's like this golden glow that comes out from you. I mean, when I started in energy work, I started with the absolute belief that I would be a medium and that's it. I wanted to save people's lives through mediumship work. And that's actually talking to the non-physical, because I had an experience where my grandfather died and my sister was mourning. She was lost in loss. And I didn't want anything to happen to her. And it was getting that deep, and the despair she was having. I said, oh no, not on my watch. And so then, you know, before I went to bed, I was saying, okay, God, what can I have these conversations? You know, you can call it higher self, source, light. I'm just going to label it God. I say, okay, God, help me out here. You know, this is not going to happen. What can I do? And at the time, I didn't know anything about this type of work. I was still in corporate, but my sister, you know, was going through that. And I went to a networking event. Now, listen up, everybody, because I said, God, please help me to help her. So I went to a networking event at my corporate job. I was talking to all these people because that's what I did for a living at that time. And this woman came up and started telling me, you know, she was talking to things she couldn't see. Again, I knew nothing about this type of work. And so I took it home and I'm like, oh man, I probably should reach out to this person because there's nowhere else I can go. And this presented to me, and I'm ready, willing, and able to do whatever it takes. So I set up a three-way call, and she instantaneously started talking about my grandfather. And my sister asked specific questions. She just wanted to know, was he in pain? Was he with grandma? Is he happy? And you know, all those questions that you want to have before your loved one transitions, or at least she felt that way. And after that, she was celebrating life. It's almost as if a key took her out of the cage she kept her in. And I said, I want to save lives like that. So going back to manifesting, I literally manifested that woman because I connected and I was simply asking guidance to be directed to something that I could help my sister with. And lo and behold, this woman I met, you know, open to receive, ready, willing, and able. And she came into my life through that networking event. And I took guided action, means that I called the woman to set the appointment. That's the end result. You have to take guided action. You could get the card, you could talk to people, but you still have to step into it. And there's so many things I've manifested. I'm going to tell you about one more before I talk about love and marriage and Real Housewives of Potomac. But at the time, I was I do this live online group energy clearing once a month, and it's the first of every month. And I was telling everyone, okay, I want you all to write 111 things that you can manifest and you want to manifest for the year. Well, I'm going to do what I say. If I'm giving it to everyone else, I'm going to do it. So I wrote it down. And the first at the top was I'm going to heal my thyroid by, it was 2025. And at the time, it was 2024 when I suggested everybody write these 111 things you want to manifest. So as I was writing them, when I wrote, I'm going to heal my thyroid, I could feel it as I was writing, meaning I could feel like, yes, this is going to happen. And then you know you're in that energy to move forward for your end result. So fast forward it was probably like 6 months later, I had an open house at my studio and I invited everyone in the building. And only three people came from the entire building, but one was a homeopathic doctor. My place was packed with all my clients and friends. We were having an amazing time, and I kept getting distracted. And this one moment that I had, I looked at her and I said, "Do you believe you could heal a thyroid?" She said, "Absolutely." She didn't even hesitate. I said, "I'm going to make an appointment." Again, I thought it because I wrote it down, think it, feel it. I felt it as I was writing, and I took guided action and made an appointment. Today, my thyroid is completely healed. All my blood work is the best it's ever had, and I'm off all medications. I took guided action and I made it happen. And the homeopathic doctor said, I wish I had more clients like you because we have to step into believing the end result, taking action no matter what, and moving forward to know that we can create it and do it. Pretty powerful.
I love that. I love that. I'll tell a little story on manifestation. I love telling this story. Back before I really stepped into my spirituality, I was always a goal setter. I was always making lists. I always had little goals that I was working towards. And I really believe that if you set a goal and really visualized it, you could create it. I used to love to write on post-it notes, personal, spiritual, financial goals, and I would put the month and year that I expected them to come through. And back in the day, back in the olden days, I'll tell you how old I was. We used to have felt top roofs on our vehicles. Like it was like a felt top. It wasn't vinyl. It wasn't, you didn't have a lot of the fancy. And I would take those post-it notes and pin them across the top of my vehicle. And people that would go to lunch with me at work or would get in my car, and they would think I was the oddest duck because they'd look up and go, "What is that?" And I go, "I want to see it as often as I can. And if I
Yes.
put it in my car in the order I want it to happen, it allows my subconscious to really focus on it, whether I'm really looking at it or not." And so at some point, I traded in my car and I got a convertible. Well, pinning those notes on the top of my car wasn't going to work. So I took them all down and put them in a stack and stuffed them in my desk and forgot all about them. Forgot I had them, forgot anything about them. I didn't put them up. 2 years later, I'm moving into my first home and I'm unpacking all my stuff. And when you're unpacking stuff, you're curious about what you have. It's when you take those moments and really look through stuff. And I pull out these post-it notes. I'm not kidding you. And I was like, I haven't seen these in a long time. Start going through them. The month and the year that I had said I was going to be in a new home that was mine, on my first home, was the exact month and year that I moved into my house. Did I remember that? No. Did I focus on it? No. I put it out to the universe and said, this is what I want. This is when I want it to happen. This is when I'm going to have it. And then I forgot all about it. I didn't fret over it. I didn't worry over it. I didn't put all that energy. Sometimes we worry too much. We put something up and then we worry and fret about it and get really anxious. And when you do that, you block it from coming. But if you just release it and trust, sometimes we can manifest and create lots of things. And I tell that story all the time because it's just one of a zillion that I've done throughout my lifetime. by just setting goals and intentions of this is what I want, this is what I want to bring in. And it was shocking even to me. It took my breath away when I pulled that Post-it note and went, oh my God, the exact month and year that I had put it out there. I mean, I don't make this stuff up. I'm just like, wow, this was meant
Yes.
to happen, right?
Yes. Yes. And the most interesting thing, vision boards, you sort of did a mini vision board session inside your car by showing that and you took it down. I always tell people if you're going to do a board, don't stick it in, write it and stick it in a drawer or stick it in a room that you're not seeing it. I have a story about manifesting a piece of jewelry that was beyond my wildest dreams. I couldn't believe it. So I was creating a vision board. And, I always tell people, make it fun. You want to make it serious with a new house, a new car, a vacation, but have fun. Put some jewelry and a handbag and shoes and, whatever else, just to have fun with it. So I was looking through this luxury magazine. It was a luxury DC or something. And I was cutting all this Cartier and Dior and all this and just sticking it on the board just to fill the entire board up. And I stuck the board on my freezer. It was that big. So it was on the top part of my refrigerator. So you can imagine if you have a refrigerator that has the bottom and just the top. So I had it covered the entire freezer. So now every time I'm in the kitchen, every time I'm in the freezer pulling the door open, it's right there. Well, then it became my peripheral vision. I wasn't really looking at it, just grab the handle, open, close, open, close. So one day, a friend of mine who I helped him a lot. I did way over and beyond, but in the end, I felt like really good about helping this individual for a long, consistent basis because he didn't have family or children or ex-partners or whatever. So I helped him beyond. One day out of the blue, he says, there's this row of stores in Chevy Chase. You work up above it was slightly before all of my spiritual practice, but I was already manifesting stuff since my childhood. And he says, I want to take you into this shop and I want you to pick whatever you want. I'm like, what? Because the strip of stores had Louis Vuitton, Cartier, Bulgari or whatever that brand is. And I'm like, okay. So we went into Cartier and I'm looking around and I'm looking around. The first thing is like, okay, you can go above and beyond in Cartier. But I'm just like, earrings, rings, and laid a couple things out. And I'm like, okay, I'll hide my eyes, but because I really did beyond the value of that jewelry. But that's another story. So I picked this ring out and they had to size it and it was delivered. And I showed my two children at the time, they were in their late teens. And I said, look what I got for doing all these other things, girls. This is what it means to be in service. But, you don't expect anything in return because I was always doing things through love, with love, loving in service. And so my daughter says, Mom, that ring is on your vision board. I didn't even know. I ran into the kitchen. It was in the very corner. The exact ring was on that vision board in the corner. And it blew me away because she's been seeing that vision board while we're in the kitchen. So she knew exactly what was on it because it became my peripheral vision. I didn't even put it together until she pointed it out. It blew my mind. So it's stuff like that, just like you were saying, that it was like a temporary kind of vision board that you had in your car and you put it aside. But there's a fine line between creation and lack. It's even thinner than a single strand of hair. It's because if you're focusing on something that you don't have, but you want, and it's a constant focus, 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 then you're focusing on the things you don't have. And what are you going to create more of what you don't have? I had to learn this, along the way. And so I said, okay, I got the vision board, or I would think about it in the shower. The shower, we're in there, 5, 8, 10 minutes at the most. And then I would not think about it the rest of the day. And then I would say, what will it take to have this at the end while I'm going to bed? And I let it go. And then I would just rotate that, and then things would happen. I began to, with supersizing things, I would take 3x5 cards and write 4 sentences on what I would want to have. And I would memorize 5 or 6 of the cards, and then I would take one card of the 4 or 5 sentences, and I would repeat those in the morning, and I would repeat those at night and let it go. And one of them was, I want to have 5 or more vacations a year. I want to have fun and excitement on those vacations. I want to have it, and I want to be paid to go on those vacations, right? So again, working at corporate, this was, supersizing my manifestations. And one day, and I was focusing on that one particular one. And one day, out of the blue, my corporate boss came to me, and before I said, I was going on a work trip, and I said, hey, I want to go it's California or something. I said, I want to go earlier, and I want to stay later after this event that I have to go to. Would that be okay? Can I just book the flight earlier and later? You're paying for it anyway, but I'm going to pay for the rest before and after. He goes, yes. And then he came to me and he says, Terrie, you've been working beyond your goals, or way beyond what we ever expected. You're a superstar. And he said, we're going to pay you for while you're the beginning and after, and we're just going to call it a day. So I got paid to be on vacation. But beyond what I was already allowed to have, you know what I'm saying? If you're only allowed a week or two weeks during the year, but I was paid. And so at the end of that year, I looked at that card, and I had taken 5 vacations that I was paid for through that entire year. So because we have to allow ourselves to be more present, we have to not stranglehold or focus on so much on what we don't have to create what we do have, and then have fun with it, and go and believe and know, I got this, it's mine, and then just have fun. You see how I'm like, okay, woohoo, it is like that. And so when it came to, I ended up manifesting Real Housewives of Potomac first. And when I would go into, and I would do it through meditation. And because I had not seen or been on TV yet at that time, I didn't know or feel what the end result would be, meaning I didn't know what cameras would look like in front of you, and I didn't know how that would feel. And so I had already spent years on practicing videos and placing them on social media. And so I had the strength of being in my, recording my own stuff, but not anyone else with these, big corporate cameras. And so being on Real Housewives of Potomac took me a year. However, it was so magical on how it happened. So I would just meditate every night. And then in my meditations, I could do, create a visualization, and then the movie starts taking over. And if you trust it, it just happens, but it takes practice. You're not going to get it in a week, and you may not get it in a month. It'll just start happening. You got to do whatever it takes. So I'd meditate, and I was working at a wellness center at a time, and I came in and there was nobody at the front desk. And I always believed that when the phone was ringing, it's for me, and nobody's answering it. And I'm like, I'm going to get that call. That's just the way I think. So I went and answered the phone, and I announced, the business, and they said, may we speak to the owner? This is Bravo. I'm like, it was for me. And I said, okay, I'll give her a message. And I hung up. So a month later, I come into the studio, or to the wellness center, and there's all of everybody that works there is moving. Like, they're all moving around. And I said, what's going on? They said, the Real Housewives are coming in today. And I'm like, no one told me. I'm so glad I wore my makeup today. And so I said, okay, now listen up, everyone. I didn't jump in expecting it to be for me. I simply said, what would you like me to do, and where do you want me to stand? Well, the owner goes, stand in the corner. We'll call you when we need you. Okay. I stood in the corner and I just waited. And then the camera crew came in and walked right down to the end of the hall. Several producers walked in right down to the end of the hall. I said, is there anything anybody wants me to do? Just stand in the corner. Okay. So I stood there. Within 15 minutes, all the people, camera crew, producers, everybody starts hollering for me, Terrie, down the hall. Doot, 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 doot. Yes. Is there anything I can do for you? You need coffee? You need water? No, we need you. We're going to mic you up right now. And I said, ooh, what are we doing? They said, okay, here is the scenario. And I said, do you want me to do what I do naturally, or do you want me to cause some challenges? Because, I could just trigger people right and left. No, do what you do naturally. I said, okay, here I am mic'd up. I go right into the room and then the two Real Housewives, there was only two at the time that were doing this particular episode, came in, and that's exactly how it started filming. That's exactly how I manifested it. And it wasn't me grabbing, pushing, shoving, get out of my way. It came to me because I became the magnet, because I believed I could make it happen. When I took that call, I didn't follow through with her. I simply gave her the message. I wasn't like screaming, shouting, and all that. No, it came to me. And now, fast forward, that was in 2018. And then COVID hit. And then 2021, I said, you know what? It's time to be back on TV. So I started doing my meditations, and then I incorporated what I saw when I was being filmed. I had the cameras in front of me, 6 cameras in front of me. I remember how it felt. I was a little nervous because it was my first time. And I said, I got this one because I know how it feels. I knew how I moved into my energy work. I knew what I said. And I said, oop, and I started visualizing it. Within 3 weeks, and so I'm still working at the wellness center. I get a client that comes in, and I always introduce myself. Hi, this is who I am. I've been on Bravo. And then I remember the girl said, I've been on Bravo too. I said, oh, really? And so I didn't own a TV at the time. And I said, I don't know who you are. She said, oh, yeah, I was on the Real Housewives of Potomac. And I said, well, so was I. She happened to be Monique Samuels. So Monique and I can say this because I've said this multiple times, and Monique and I are really good friends. And Monique and I started working together privately. And then I started working with her husband. Then I started working with her children. And it was a couple of months. And then she said, Terrie, I have this new opportunity. It's another reality show. And I want to know if you're interested. And I said, yes. So now remember, it took me 3 weeks for her to come to me. And then we worked together an additional 2 months. Again, I wasn't thinking wasn't on the show anymore. I was working on her, making magic happen. Again, I'm the magnet to allowing it to create because I believe, know, and trust. And then she says, I'm going to send your information to the producers. Within 2 months, I was on 5 episodes. Well, three episodes of the first season, 3 more episodes, so 6, 3 more episodes of the second season. But I worked with her, and then I worked with the producers. They could see what I could do. And then the whole entire first episode was me. And it was how I was, doing my work. And then it was an avalanche of everyone coming to me because they could see their truth in the work that I do as an energy healer. But as a master manifester, it really is exactly like that. I think it through meditation to create and know. And through the meditation, I'm feeling it. Think it, feel it. I'm feeling it being in it. Now, the first time with Love and Marriage, with Real Housewives did take me a year because I had not experienced being in the front of the TV or the cameras and all of that. So, but I didn't give up and I kept doing it. I kept visualizing whatever that looked like, people around me, and making it happen, and then TV and contracts. and then it took a year. But the second time was so much quicker because I was already in the feeling of it since I had experienced it on another reality show. And that's why that happened so much quicker. But you'll hear like Joe Dispenza and some others that work through meditations and manifesting, is that feeling it is a part of manifesting it, because you have to know that you are in it, the feeling of joy, excitement, the elevated emotions to bring forth and become the magnet to the end result.
It's really important. Some key things that you talked about was play, because when we're curious, when we're playful, when we're in that place of like the child wonder, hey, I'm excited, that real excitement, we can really create from there because we are not in fear. We're not in anxiety. We're not in worry. That's a whole different type of energy. But when you're in this playfulness of curiosity and excitement that you're going to bring it in, feel how different those energies are. When we're in that play and excitement, our energy is like way up here. When we're in that worry, despair, anxiety, our energy is way down here. And your heart has been proven by heart math that it is the generator, it is the power center of sending that energy out, the motion piece. It's just like if you're looking in a mirror and saying, I'm beautiful, and you're saying it, but you're not feeling it, you're not going to create that. You're not going to shift that. You have to have that emotional piece and being in play. I always tell people, get out a Lego set if you want a new house and play with excitement. Like, how are you going to lay out the rooms and what is the house going to look like? And you're just playing and having fun with it. You can really create it, or a vision board, or any of that stuff where you're really, really kind of playing with it. It's funny. I had this center and it grew and grew and grew. And then through COVID, after COVID, it shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. And we're in a smaller space now. And I really miss my center that I had, my big center. But after COVID, people weren't shopping, people weren't coming out. It really impacted our business on many different levels. COVID had an impact. So we needed to shrink it. And so every day when I go to the center and I go to work, I'm visualizing I'm going to a different place and that the staff's there and people are there. And I'm thinking on the way to work, oh, I wonder if we've had anybody come in today. I wonder what's happening. And I literally on the way to work visualize all this stuff. Hey, how's it going today? Well, such and such came in and we got to see such and such. They haven't been in a while. We got a shipment in the back. And I go through all of these scenarios. And I visualize the space and I feel the energy and I'm really putting it out there. And most people will go, but are you really going to create it? Well, we'll see. We'll see. If I manifest it, I'm very open to opportunities. The universe knows what I need to create that, but I'm going to play with it as long as I can play. Now, am I manifesting it on another timeline? Does it exist in an, I don't know, but I'm having lots of fun with it in this lifetime of I see myself, I see the grand opening, I see the day to day. I'm not going to storage and picking stuff up. Everything is right there where I need it. And so I go through the whole visualization on the way to work. Well, today I'm teaching blah, blah, blah. We're going to have that. We're going to pull out from this storage space at the center. We're going to set up the room. It's this big. I visualize the whole details. So that's my meditative state. Every day I go to work, on the way to work is 30 minutes. I spend the whole 30 minutes as I'm driving, visualizing what everything looks like, every detail. We'll see. I'm putting it out there. So
Absolutely. Yes.
We'll see what happens.
Yes. And feel it too. So it's very interesting that when I remember when I was going, at the end of my relationship that catapulted me to where I am today and moving back into my townhouse in a separate area. And I said to myself, okay, I want to sell this house, but I give myself time because, selling homes or leaving jobs, and if you have any weaknesses, you want to turn them into strengths. So when I left my job, I gave it a year because my weakness was confrontation. I turned it into my strength, but I knew that I, wanted to do this for a living. So my fear of confrontation, I just wrote myself a resignation letter every month until the week before. Then I was writing it every week. And then the week of, I wrote it every day. And so when I wrote that resignation letter the day of, I walked into the office. Everyone, if you could just see the video, because there was no video, but it's in my head. When I walked into his office, he was on the phone, and I moved it forward, and then I just simply let it go. I was like maybe a couple feet away from his desk, and it just glided right to him and then went back and forth and slid right there in front of him. And I was like, thank you, God, that was so perfect. But when you have time, meaning future time, that there's something what you want to create, like what you're doing, you can set the energy going to live in that space, just like you explained, and then touching it so you can be connected and saying, this is happening, and then visualizing and creating, and then letting it go and going about your day. But when I was able to sell my home, I had a year on that. So I said, okay, I want to sell it in September. I want this amount of money. And then I let it go. But I would think about it once a month and then would let it go. And I did the same thing when I wrote the resignation letter when it got closer. Now, it was in 2010 and 2008 was that big crash with reverse mortgages, and about 60% of houses on the market were in foreclosure. Well, I wasn't in foreclosure, but I was 60% of the houses around me were. And then, fast forward in 2010, it was still being cleaned up. There was still 30% of the homes in the community my house was in foreclosure. So I said to myself, I did not, and listen up, everyone, I did not allow that to take me down or alter. I was separating myself from what was happening outside and not altering what I was thinking inside or feeling inside. So fast forward, here it is. We're in July. It was the end of July, and I got a proposal. Someone wanted to buy the house, and they wanted to pay cash, and they wanted me out in 15 days. I'm like, wait, wait, I got to find a place to live. We actually settled on, and I said I wanted September 1st. We settled on September 1st. And I had to hold them off so I could at least find another place to live because I was a single mother at the time. And I remember when the real estate agent came and said, here's a proposal, here's an offer. And I said, okay, I'll take it. Well, wait a minute, you just looked at it. And I said, yeah, it was exactly what I said that I wanted a year ago. How did you do that? He said. And so yes, it can be very precise. And yes, you can do this, especially when you have fast forward a distance and still creating in time, trusting and never giving up, because doubt will creep in when it doesn't happen in the time frame. And remember, I wasn't chasing Real Housewives. I wasn't chasing Love and Marriage. I was allowing it to come to me. And then when I did the first episode, I'm like, oh, I positioned myself to be able to the next episode and the next episode, and then so on and so forth. But that is how a true master manifests, because you have to believe it, you have to think it, feel it, take guided action, and then trust beyond, because taking the guided action is where people can allow the doubt. Oh, what if? There's no what ifs. I just like, I got this. And it was really very interesting when I wrote my book, The Secret Power of You. I was still trying to come up with the title, and I was watching some YouTubes and all this stuff. And I remember someone said, just focus on allowing the title to be something that could alter entire lives. And then one day I came up with it and I wrote it on a piece of paper and stuck it on the wall. And then I sat there and meditated on that. And in my meditation, I heard, your book will be exactly like the 4 agreements. Well, that shook me out of my meditation. And I said, whoa, 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 those are big shoes. Whoa, gosh, that's an amazing book. Fast forward a year later, because again, I did not strangle hold. And plus, I had to work writing the book, and it took about that time. And I was in the middle of a mastermind. And the gentleman who was the organizer had us meeting every 3 months throughout the country. This particular meeting was going to be in LA. And so we all met, and he comes over and hugs me and whispers in my ear and said, I have a surprise for you. And I said, ooh, okay. So I sat down, and an hour later, the doors of the room, it was a double doors, just opened up like the angels were singing. And then all the light around, and there was standing Don Miguel Ruiz. And I'm like, what? What? And I did not tell anybody what I had heard in my meditation. He came and sat right next to me, and we just talked and talked and talked, and he endorsed my book. So the thing is, it's not as similar to his, but it was the connection of him coming to me and then endorsing it was so magical. But see how you move through meditation. Please, people, meditation is so important. It's like brushing your teeth. You would never leave the house without brushing your teeth. The same thing with meditation. If you meditate, you connect freely and clearly to source God energy. It's you is the one where, the ideas, the thinking, the feeling, connecting, receiving your answers, and then taking action. I didn't know what it meant, when they said my book was going to be like Dominic, 4 agreements, but the connection there opened up. So it was God in this way kind of teasing me, and then knowing that here he is sitting right next to me and endorsed my book.
I love that. It has been so fun chatting with you today. We could chat forever and keep everybody on here forever and a day. But I'd love for you to share a little bit. If people wanted to connect and work with you, what are some of the things that you offer?
Thank you, Violet. Well, I do one-on-one, I do remote work, and I do face-to-face, meaning I work in your subconscious space. So the things that I make sound really easy, I help shift out of your subconscious so that you can get to your end result so much quicker. I am clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient, which means I can hear, feel, and see things in my mind and hearing and seeing the movies. But you can find my book on Amazon. I take children. I work with children as small as 4 up to teenagers. I work with couples. But it really is about shedding what's in that subconscious so that you can be the master manifester. You can attract the things that you want. You can stop living in lack and bring forth all of the things that truly support your self, mind, body, and spirit.
I love that. I love that. Terrie, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. It has been truly amazing hearing your stories and being able to share our perspectives on manifesting, because I believe there's no limit to what you can bring in. But you've got to believe that, first of all, that there is no limitations. You place the limits on. It's unlimited depending on where you want to go. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
I am so grateful. I truly am. Thank you so much for saying yes to bringing me on again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to watch this episode. I hope that you'll like, comment, and follow us on your favorite channels, and that we'll see you again in the near future. I wish you a sacred and magical week.
Thank you for joining us. To find out more about Vialet, head over to discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. You can also send a personal message to Vialet through email, violet@discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. If you loved the show, subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, or Spotify. Until next time, remember, we are meant to have abundant and joyful lives. We hope to see you soon at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts.